It's just embarrassing, Mom. Honestly, Cassandra's voice, sharp and polished as the granite of her kitchen countertops, sliced through the quiet Sunday afternoon. She stood with her arms crossed, her perfectly manicured nails a jarring slash of crimson against the cream silk of her blouse. Her gaze was fixed out the window, not on the budding roses in my garden, but on the object of her contempt parked in my driveway. The tortoise. My 1998 sedan, a muted seafoam green, its paint faded by 2 decades of sun and its chrome trim pitted with age. To me, it was a vessel of memories, a faithful companion. To my daughter, it was a relic, a rolling monument to my refusal to keep up. People see you in that thing, she continued, a delicate shudder running through her. My friends, Marcus's colleagues. What must they think? Her husband, Marcus, who had been silently scrolling through his phone on my floral sofa, grunted in agreement without looking up. The sound was a small, smooth stone of condescension dropped into the placid pool of my afternoon. I felt the familiar ripple spread through me, a quiet ache of invisibility, the feeling of being a photograph fading in the sun. I said nothing, just continued to wipe down my own modest countertop, the worn laminate cool beneath my cloth. I had learned long ago that my silence was a language they didn't understand and therefore couldn't defeat. They mistook it for weakness, for acquiescence. They had no idea it was my armor. The car, my dear tortoise, was a gift from Robert, my late husband. He'd bought it for me on our 20th anniversary. Not new, but meticulously cared for by its single previous owner, a retired clockmaker. She's not fast, Elara, Robert had said, running a hand over its sturdy hood, his eyes crinkling at the corners. But she's steady. She'll never let you down. She has good bones, good bones. That was Robert all over. He was a man who understood structure, the hidden integrity of things. He was a financial analyst, but his passion was restoration, old furniture, neglected watches, forgotten companies. He saw the potential beneath the dust and decay, the value others overlooked. He saw it in this car. He saw it in me. Cassandra saw only the surface. She lived in a world of surfaces, of gleaming newness and disposable trends. Her own car was a cavernous, jet-black SUV that hummed with silent, electric power and cost more than my house. To her, my car wasn't just old, it was a statement of failure. A public declaration that her mother was content to be left behind by the world. We could help you lease something, Mom, she offered, her tone softening into that infuriating, patronizing pity she reserved for me and stray animals. Something respectable. Safe. She used the word as a weapon, implying my car, my life, my choices were a reckless endangerment. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. My life with Robert had been the safest harbor I had ever known. Now, I was adrift, and my daughter was pointing out that my lifeboat had a patch. I finally turned from the counter, the damp cloth clutched in my hand. I looked at her, at the daughter I had raised, who now looked at me with a stranger's impatient disappointment. Her face was a beautiful, smooth mask, but I could see the flicker of irritation in her eyes. I was a problem to be managed, a loose end in her perfectly curated life. The car runs just fine, dear, I said, my voice softer than I intended. It gets me where I need to go, Marcus snorted, a little puff of air that was somehow more dismissive than Cassandra's entire speech. To the grocery store and the library, maybe, he muttered, his thumbs still flying across his screen. I wouldn't take that thing on the highway. The conversation was over. They had passed their judgment. I was the eccentric old mother with the embarrassing car. They stayed for another 20 minutes, filling the air with talk of their upcoming trip to Tuscany, a kitchen renovation, and a charity gala Marcus was co-chairing. I nodded and smiled, a ghost in my own home, my teacup warming my hands while a chill settled deep in my bones. When they left, Cassandra paused at the door and gave the tortoise one last, withering look. Just think about it, Mom. Please. The door clicked shut behind them, and the silence they left behind was louder than their chatter. I stood at the window and watched their black monolith of a vehicle whisper down the street, eclipsing my humble sedan for a moment before disappearing. I was alone with my thoughts and the steady, quiet presence of the car in the driveway. Embarrassing. The word echoed in the silence. It wasn't just about the car. It was about me. My quiet life, my small garden, my worn paperbacks, my contentment with the simple and the lasting. All of it was an embarrassment to her. For years, I had absorbed these little cuts, these dismissals. I had allowed their definition of me to shrink my world. But today, something was different. The cut was deeper. It had struck not just my pride, but the memory of Robert. It had insulted the very philosophy he had lived by and taught to me. A philosophy of hidden worth. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn, a resolve began to harden within me, cool and clear as glass. They thought my car was worthless. They thought I was worthless. They had no idea what was hidden under the hood. That night, sleep was a distant shore I couldn't reach. The house was a tomb of familiar sounds, the groan of the pipes, the hum of the refrigerator, the sigh of the old wood settling. Each sound was a reminder of the life I had built here, a life that now felt like a museum exhibit my own daughter viewed with disdain. I slipped out of bed, pulling on my old chenille robe, its fabric worn to a silken softness. The floorboards were cool beneath my bare feet as I made my way through the darkened house, not to the kitchen for a warm drink, but to the door that led to the garage. The air inside was still and cool, thick with the scent of motor oil, old newspapers, and dry soil from the bag of potting mix in the corner. It was a smell of quiet industry, of Robert's weekend projects. And there, in the center of the space, sat the tortoise, its seafoam green muted to a soft gray in the moonlight filtering through the single high window. It didn't look embarrassing. It looked patient. I opened the driver's side door. The familiar, gentle squeak of the hinge was like a greeting. I slid onto the driver's seat, the worn vinyl cool against my skin. My hands found the steering wheel, its thin, hard plastic polished smooth by years of Robert's grasp and then my own. This was our sanctuary, this car. It had ferried us on countless journeys, not just to vacation spots and family gatherings, but through the landscape of our life together. It had carried us home from the hospital with a newborn Cassandra, swaddled and sleeping in the back. It had idled patiently in school pickup lines. It had been the silent, private chamber for difficult conversations, for tearful reconciliations, for shared, hopeful dreams whispered in the dark after a late movie. It had held all of our history within its humble frame. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes, breathing in the car's unique scent, a faint, pleasant mixture of old paper from the maps in the glove compartment, a hint of the pipe tobacco Robert used to smoke, and the lingering, almost floral note of the air freshener I'd hung from the rearview mirror years ago. My fingers traced the cracks in the dashboard, a fine web of lines that told the story of 1,000 sunny days. Robert had loved this car for its simplicity. No computers to fail, Elara, he'd explained once, tapping the dashboard. No fancy electronics to break. Everything in here is mechanical. Honest. You can see how it works. You can fix it. People don't value that anymore. They want mystery boxes they have to replace, not puzzles they can solve. That was the key. A puzzle to be solved. We had talked about it often, in hushed, almost playful tones in the dead of night. We called it the Lifeboat Protocol. It was Robert's contingency plan, born from his distrust of ostentatious wealth and his deep understanding of human nature. He'd seen too many families torn apart by inheritance, too many children who saw their parents not as people, but as future windfalls. If they can't see the value in the small things, he'd said, his voice a low rumble in the darkness of our bedroom, they'll never be fit stewards of the big things. Wealth isn't a prize, Elara. It's a responsibility. And it can be a poison. The Lifeboat Protocol was designed to be a test. A test of character, of perception, of love. And the key to it all, the unassuming vessel that held the map, was this car. Cassandra's words from the afternoon came back to me, not as an insult now, but as a trigger. It's just embarrassing, Mom. She had unknowingly initiated the protocol. She had failed the first, most crucial part of the test. She couldn't see the value in the vessel. A profound sadness washed over me, followed by a wave of something else, something steely and unfamiliar. It was resolve. Not the angry, jagged resolve of a fight, but the smooth, heavy certainty of a tide turning. For years, I had made myself small to accommodate their grand ambitions. I had let their world of glass and chrome make me feel that my world of wood and worn fabric was less than. I had allowed their judgment to become a mirror, and I had started to see their diminished reflection as my own. No more. Robert hadn't left me a fortune to be squandered by people who couldn't appreciate its source. He had left me a tool. A key. And I was finally ready to use it. I sat there for a long time, in the silent, waiting car, as the moon traced its slow arc across the sky. I wasn't just sitting in a car, I was sitting in the heart of my past, and in the driver's seat of my future. The decision settled over me, not with a crash, but with a quiet click, like a lock finding its key. Tomorrow, I would begin. Tomorrow, I would give my daughter the keys to the car. And in doing so, I would unlock my own freedom. The first light of dawn was painting the kitchen in shades of pearl and rose when I picked up the phone. My hand was steady. My heart was calm. I dialed the number for my younger daughter, Lena. She lived 3 states away, a painter who had inherited her father's eye for seeing the beauty in forgotten things, peeling paint, rusted metal, the character in a weathered face. She had never understood Cassandra's obsession with the new. "Mom, is everything okay?" Her voice was warm, still thick with sleep, but instantly alert with concern. That was Lena. Present. Engaged. "Everything is fine, sweetheart. Better than fine, actually. I wanted to hear your voice." I poured myself a cup of coffee, the aroma a comforting morning ritual. I didn't tell her everything, not yet. The lifeboat protocol was a private, intricate mechanism, and I needed to move the pieces into place myself. But I needed to hear her voice as a touchstone, a reminder that not all of my children saw me through a lens of dismissive pity. I talked about the garden, about a book I was reading. Then, I steered the conversation gently. "Cassandra and Marcus came by yesterday," I said, my tone light. "Oh." I could hear the cautious note in Lena's voice. She knew the tension that always hummed in the air when Cassandra was near. "She's worried about my car." Lena laughed, a soft, genuine sound. "The tortoise? What's wrong with it? Did it finally lose a race with a glacier?" "Something like that," I said, smiling. "She thinks it's an embarrassment. That I should get something. Respectable. Lena repeated the word, and I could picture her rolling her eyes. "Since when is reliability not respectable?" "Dad loved that car. He said it was built like a Swiss watch." "He did," I said, my voice catching for a second. "Thank you for remembering that, honey." "Of course, I remember. I remember him teaching me how to check the oil, telling me the engine was so simple you could practically see the logic in it." There was a pause, and then her voice softened. "She doesn't get it, Mom. She doesn't get you. You're not a fixer-upper project. You deserve to be happy, exactly as you are." Her words were a balm. They were the affirmation I needed, the final gust of wind in my sails. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Fortified, I took my coffee and my notebook to the small desk in the corner of the living room. I opened it to a fresh page and made my second call. The number was old, committed to memory. The voice that answered was just as I remembered it, dry, precise, and imbued with a quiet authority. Davies, and Finch. "How may I direct your call?" "I'd like to speak to Mr. Alistair Davies, please." "My name is Ilara Vance." There was a brief pause. One moment, Mrs. Vance. Alistair Davies had been Robert's lawyer and, eventually, his friend. He was a man cut from the same cloth, quiet, observant, with an appreciation for the long game. When he came on the line, his voice was unchanged by the years. "Ilara. It's been too long. I trust you are well." "I am, Alistair. Thank you. I'm calling about an old arrangement. Something you and Robert set up for me. We used to call it the lifeboat protocol." The silence on the other end of the line was not one of confusion, but of deep, immediate understanding. I could almost hear the tumblers clicking into place in his sharp mind. "I see," he said, his voice dropping slightly. "I have the file. The instructions are quite clear. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" "I am," I said, my voice clear and firm. There was no hesitation. "Cassandra was here yesterday. She said what was needed." "I understand perfectly," he replied. There was no judgment in his tone, only professional readiness. He knew Robert's reasoning inside and out, He had helped draft the very documents that now sat waiting in his fireproof safe. The primary assets are held in the trust, as you know. The triggering mechanism is unconventional, but legally sound. We'll need to meet to sign the activation documents. I can have them drawn up by this afternoon. That would be perfect, Alistair. Thank you. Not at all, Elara, he said, a hint of warmth finally entering his voice. Robert was a very wise man. He would be proud of you. After the call, a profound sense of peace settled over me. I was no longer a passive observer in my own life. I was setting the wheels in motion, following a map laid out for me by the man who had known me best, a map he trusted me to read when the time was right. The time was now. The phone rang again an hour later. It was Cassandra. Her voice was bright, artificial. Hi, Mom. Just calling to see how you are. Did you sleep okay? I slept wonderfully, dear, I said, and it was the truth. Good. Good. Listen, Marcus and I were talking, and we really want to help you with the car situation. We found a great little hybrid, very safe, great mileage. We could come over this afternoon and take you for a test drive. The offer hung in the air, a perfect crystallization of their worldview. They weren't asking, they were telling. They weren't helping, they were managing. That's very thoughtful of you, Cassandra, I said calmly. But it won't be necessary. In fact, I'd like you and Marcus to come over tomorrow afternoon. I have something for you. Oh. The surprise in her voice was palpable. A gift. Mom, you don't have to. I want to, I interrupted gently. It's about the car. I've made a decision. Please, just come around 3-inch. Okay, she said, her voice filled with a triumphant curiosity. She thought I was capitulating. She thought she had won. We'll be there. As I hung up the phone, I looked out the window at the tortoise, its unassuming form a silent promise. They thought they were coming to witness my surrender. They were actually coming to their inheritance. The next 24 hours passed in a state of heightened awareness. The world seemed sharper, colors more vivid. I was moving through the final hours of my old life, and every detail felt precious. I spent the morning in my garden, a place that had always been my sanctuary. Today, it felt like a training ground. I plunged my hands into the cool, dark earth, my fingers finding the tenacious roots of dandelions and thistle. As I pulled them, one by one, I felt a parallel clearing within myself. Each weed was a small, nagging insecurity, a long-held resentment, a fear I had allowed to take root. The condescending remarks from Marcus, the pitying looks from Cassandra's friends, my own quiet acquiescence, I pulled them all out and tossed them into the wheelbarrow. My garden, like my life, had become overgrown with things I had tolerated for too long. It was time to cultivate what I wanted to keep and ruthlessly discard the rest. I worked until my back ached and my hands were stained with soil, a satisfying, earthy perfume. I pruned the roses, their thorns pricking my skin, reminding me that beautiful things have boundaries, that they know how to protect themselves. By the afternoon, the garden beds were clean, the soil turned, ready for new seeds. It was a mirror of my own internal state, cleared, prepared, ready for what was next. Later, I sat at the dining room table with boxes of old photographs, a task I'd been avoiding for years. I sifted through decades of memories. There was Robert, young and laughing on a beach, his arm around me. There I was, holding a tiny Cassandra, her face puckered and red. Another of Lena, covered in finger paint, a look of pure, unadulterated joy on her face. I saw myself at different stages, a hopeful young wife, a tired but happy young mother, a woman finding her footing again after Robert's passing. In every photo, I saw a quiet strength I had forgotten I possessed. Cassandra and Marcus saw me only as I was now, a widow, a mother, a fixture in an old house. They had forgotten all the other women I had been. I was rediscovering them, reassembling them. They were my allies, the forgotten parts of myself I was calling back to my side for the coming confrontation. The phone call from Alistair Davies came just after lunch. The documents are ready, Elara. They are comprehensive. Everything is in order. The trust is ironclad. Your control is absolute once the transfer is initiated. His words were a quiet drumbeat of reassurance. My plan was not just an emotional whim, it was a fortress, legally sound and strategically brilliant, all thanks to Robert's foresight. That evening, as I prepared a simple supper for myself, Cassandra called again. "Just confirming for tomorrow at 3, she chirped. "We're so excited to see what you have for us. Marcus thinks you're finally letting us buy you that new car." The dramatic irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. Her assumption, her smug certainty, no longer stung. It was merely a data point, further confirmation that my course of action was the correct one. "I'm looking forward to it too, dear," I said, my voice serene. "We have a lot to talk about." I was not lying. I looked around my small, quiet house, at the furniture Robert and I had chosen, at the books that lined the walls, at the faint outlines on the wallpaper where pictures of the girls had hung for years. It was a good life. But it was a life lived in the past. Tomorrow, I was stepping into the future. And I would be driving myself there. The tortoise was waiting, its engine cool but ready. It had one last journey to make as my car, and it would be the most important one of its life. It was about to deliver a message, a lesson in value that had been waiting decades to be taught. And I, its quiet, unassuming driver, was about to take the wheel of my own destiny. The day arrived clear and bright, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. It felt like the world was holding its breath. I dressed carefully, not in my usual gardening clothes or a soft house dress, but in a tailored pair of grey trousers and a crisp, white linen shirt. It was the kind of outfit Robert would have called my boardroom attire, an ensemble that projected a quiet, unshakable competence. I felt a sense of calm purpose, the pre-battle serenity of a soldier who knows the strategy is sound. I made tea, selecting the fine china cups we only used for special occasions. I arranged a plate of simple, elegant biscuits on a silver tray. The scene in the living room was one of deceptive tranquility, a calm sea before the storm. When the doorbell rang at precisely 3 o'clock, my heart gave a single, hard thump, and then settled. I was ready. Cassandra and Marcus swept in, bringing with them a gust of expensive perfume and restless energy. Cassandra was wearing a sharp, navy blue dress that looked like it had been tailored to within an inch of its life. Marcus was in a polo shirt and chinos, looking for all the world like he was stopping by the golf club. "Mom, the house looks lovely," Cassandra said, kissing the air beside my cheek. It was her standard greeting, delivered with the same detached appreciation one might offer a museum display. They settled on the sofa, Marcus immediately pulling out his phone. Cassandra looked around the room, a small, tight smile on her face. It was the smile of someone who believes they have successfully managed a difficult situation. "So," she began, leaning forward conspiratorially, "what's this big decision you've made? Did you find a car you like?" I poured the tea, my movements deliberate and unhurried. "In a way," I said, handing her a cup. "But first, I want to talk about your father." The mention of Robert seemed to surprise them. They rarely spoke of him anymore. To them, he was a portrait on the mantelpiece, a benevolent but distant memory. "Dad," Cassandra said, a slight frown creasing her brow. "What about him?" "He taught me a great deal about value," I said, settling into the armchair opposite them. "Not just about money, but about real worth. The kind that isn't obvious at a glance." He believed that the strongest things are often the most overlooked. Marcus looked up from his phone, a flicker of interest in his eyes. He was a man who understood money, or at least, the appearance of it. He was a smart investor, he conceded. Made some good calls in the tech boom. He did, I agreed. But his greatest investments weren't in the stock market. They were in principles. In ideas. He built our entire life on one simple idea: that character is the only currency that truly holds its value. I let that statement hang in the air. Cassandra shifted uncomfortably. She hated these kinds of conversations. They were too abstract, too far removed from the tangible world of assets and acquisitions she inhabited. "That's very sweet, Mom, but what does this have to do with your car?" she asked, her patience wearing thin. This was it. The moment to set the hook. I looked directly at her, my gaze steady. "You're right about the car, Cassandra. It's old. It's served its purpose for me. It's time for a change." A look of profound relief washed over her face. Marcus pocketed his phone. They exchanged a quick, triumphant glance. They had won. The stubborn old woman had finally seen reason. "I'm so glad to hear you say that, Mom," Cassandra said, her voice oozing with magnanimous warmth. "We'll help you find something perfect that won't be necessary," I said softly. I reached for the small, velvet-lined box I had placed on the coffee table. I opened it. Inside, nestled on the dark blue velvet, was the single, worn key to the tortoise, along with its matching, unadorned key fob. "I've decided what to do with it," I said. "I'm giving it to you." I slid the box across the table towards them. It came to a stop just in front of Cassandra. She stared at the key as if it were a venomous insect. Her face cycled through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, a dawning horror. "You're giving it to us," she stammered. "But why?" "We don't want it, I know," I said. "But it's my most valuable possession. And I want you to have it." Marcus let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Elara, with all due respect, that car is worth a few $100s at the scrapyard." "It's not valuable, that," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand, "is where you are mistaken." I leaned back in my chair, the first stage of my plan complete. The key was on the table. The gift had been offered. They saw a piece of scrap metal. They had no idea they were looking at the key to a kingdom. The silence in the room was thick with their confusion. Cassandra stared at the key in its box, her perfectly painted lips parted in a silent O of bewilderment. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, recovered first. He leaned forward, adopting a placating tone, the one a person uses for a beloved but senile relative. "Elara," he began, his voice gentle. "This is a very sentimental gesture. We appreciate it. But it's not practical. We have no use for the car. What we want is for you to have a new, safe car. Let us buy the old one from you. We'll even take it to the junkyard ourselves. Think of it as our gift to you." His words were so perfectly condescending, so utterly blind to the reality of the situation, that I almost smiled. They were trying to manage me, to neatly package and dispose of the problem they thought I represented, right down to the car itself. "It's not a sentimental gesture, Marcus," I said, my voice losing its softness and taking on a new, harder edge. "It's a transaction. A transfer of property. And it's more than just the car." I reached down beside my chair and lifted a small, leather-bound journal. It was worn at the edges, the dark brown leather faded to a soft tan in places. The cover was blank. I placed it on the table next to the key. "Everything you need to know is in here," I said. "Your father was a very meticulous man. He kept this logbook in the glove compartment since the day we bought it." Cassandra picked it up tentatively, as if it might bite. She opened it. The first few pages were filled with Robert's neat, compact handwriting, detailing oil changes, tire rotations, and mileage. "It's a maintenance log," she said, her voice flat with disappointment. "Mom, what is this all about?" "Keep reading," I said. I stood up. "Let's go to the garage. There's something you need to see." They followed me, their reluctance a palpable force behind me. They walked like people being led to a chore, their faces a mixture of irritation and strained patience. I flicked on the garage light. The tortoise stood there, silent and unassuming under the bare bulb. It looked exactly as it always had, old, tired, and, to their eyes, worthless. "I don't understand," Cassandra said, stopping at the doorway. "What are we doing out here?" I didn't answer. I walked to the passenger side, opened the door, and reached into the glove compartment. My fingers found the small, hidden latch Robert had shown me years ago, a tiny metal nub concealed beneath the upper lip of the compartment's frame. I pressed it. With a soft, hydraulic hiss that was utterly incongruous with the car's age, a section of the dashboard above the glove box popped open, revealing a hidden cavity. Inside, nestled in custom-fitted foam, was a small, steel lockbox. Marcus's eyes widened. He took a step forward. "What in the world is that?" I took the key from the velvet box Cassandra was still holding and used it to open the lockbox. Inside, there was no cash, no jewelry. There was only a single, heavy, engraved key and another, smaller notebook. I handed the leather-bound journal, the logbook, to Marcus. "Look past the maintenance records," I instructed. He flipped through the pages. After the records of oil changes, the entries changed. They became a series of numbers and cryptic phrases, written in Robert's hand. Geneva sunrise, account 7b. Key, the tortoise's birthday, Marcus read aloud, his voice laced with confusion. Zurich mountain pass, folio 3. Password, the clockmaker's final sale. He looked up at me, his face a mask of dawning comprehension. What is this? It's the real logbook, I said. Your father didn't just invest in stocks. He invested in hard assets. Gold bullion, rare stamps, bearer bonds. All held in anonymous vaults in Switzerland. He was old-fashioned. He didn't trust digital trails. He built a fortune, a significant one, and he secured it in a way that only someone with the right key could access. I held up the small notebook from the lockbox. This is the ledger. And that, I said, pointing to the journal in his hands, is the cipher. And this, I picked up the single, heavy key from the lockbox, opens the first vault. The car itself is the master key. Its vehicle identification number is the primary passphrase for the entire trust. Its purchase date, the name of its first owner, the mileage on the day we bought it, it's all part of the authentication sequence. The car isn't just a car, Marcus. It's a safe. The color drained from Cassandra's face. She stared at the faded seafoam green sedan with a look of horrified awe, as if seeing it for the first time. The object of her shame, the symbol of her mother's irrelevance, was a treasure chest. The fortune, it's in the car, she whispered, her voice barely audible. No, dear, I said, looking her directly in the eye. The fortune was never in the car. The fortune is the car. Its history, its identity. Everything you overlooked. Everything you despised. They were silent, the sheer weight of the revelation pressing the air out of the room. Their world, with its clear hierarchies of value, had just been turned upside down by a 2-decade-old sedan and a dusty logbook. The mockery had curdled into a frantic, greedy realization. The battle was over. The victory was mine. The shock in the garage was a tangible thing, a sudden drop in temperature. Marcus stood frozen, clutching the leather journal as if it were the Dead Sea Scrolls. His face, usually a carefully composed mask of smug superiority, was slack with disbelief. Cassandra leaned against the doorframe, her hand to her mouth. The sound she made was a cross between a gasp and a sob. Their carefully constructed world, built on the solid foundations of brand names and market values, had just been demolished. I don't believe it, Marcus finally managed to say, his voice a hoarse whisper. He started flipping through the pages of the journal frantically, his eyes scanning Robert's cryptic notes. The numbers, the account codes, this is real. This is substantial. He looked from the book to me, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of something other than condescension in his eyes. It was fear. Fear of what he had so profoundly misjudged. Cassandra found her voice, high and thin. All this time, you were driving around on a fortune? And you never told us. The accusation in her tone was breathtaking. The entitlement. As if this wealth was something I had been hiding from them, a secret I had selfishly kept. The last vestiges of my maternal instinct to protect her feelings evaporated in that moment, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. It was never your fortune to know about, Cassandra, I said, my voice level. Your father and I created this plan together. It wasn't just a way to protect the assets. It was a test, she repeated, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and confusion. What kind of cruel game is that? It's the kind of game a wise man plays when he fears his wealth will poison his children, I retorted. He set one simple condition. The person who inherited control of this trust had to be someone who could see its true nature. Someone who could appreciate the vessel as much as the contents. Someone who understood that a thing's worth is not determined by its price tag or its age. I let my words sink in, each one a carefully placed stone building a wall between my old life and my new one. I looked at my daughter, at her beautiful, strained face, and I felt a pang of sorrow not for her, but for the person she might have been. You called this car an embarrassment, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of years of silent hurt. You were ashamed of it. You were ashamed of me for driving it. You failed the test, Cassandra. You failed it in the most spectacular way possible. Her face crumpled. The tears that came were not of remorse, but of rage and frustrated greed. "So you're just going to keep it all for yourself," she cried. "After all we've done for you? All the times we've offered to help?" "Help?" I asked, and this time I did smile, a sad, weary smile. "You mean all the times you've tried to manage me? To mold me into a version of a mother you could be proud of at your dinner parties? That wasn't help, dear. That was control." I took the heavy vault key from the lockbox and closed the secret compartment in the dashboard with a decisive click. I then turned to the velvet box they had left on a nearby workbench. I picked up the original car key. "I told you I was giving you the car," I said, holding up the key. "And I am. But this key, the one you scorned, it only starts the engine. It gives you the shell. The empty vessel you so coveted." I then held up the vault key. "This key, the one you never knew existed, this one is mine. Yesterday, I met with Alistair Davies. I signed the documents to activate the lifeboat protocol. By presenting you with the car and the logbook, and by you accepting them under the false pretense of its worthlessness, I fulfilled the final clause of your father's will. The trust, and all of its assets, are now under my sole and absolute control." Marcus looked as if I had physically struck him. That's not possible." "It's perfectly legal," I said calmly. "Your father was, as you said, a very smart man." I walked past them, out of the garage and into the bright sunlight of the backyard. They followed me, stumbling like sleepwalkers. I turned to face them on the patio, my garden blooming behind me. "I am selling this house," I announced. "I'm moving. I'm going to travel. I'm going to live the rest of my life on my own terms, not the terms you and the world have tried to set for me. The fortune is not my prize. It is my freedom." I looked at the car key in my hand, the key to the tortoise. "The car is yours now, officially. You can sell it for scrap, as you suggested. Or you can keep it." As a reminder, I tossed the key to Marcus. He caught it out of sheer reflex, his face a canvas of utter shock. "A reminder," Cassandra whispered, "of what?" I looked at my daughter, perhaps for the last time with any trace of the woman who had raised her. "Of how much you lost, simply because you couldn't see." And with that, I turned and walked back into the house, leaving them standing in my driveway with the keys to a worthless old car and the crushing weight of a fortune they had held in their hands and let slip away. The weeks that followed were a blur of liberating activity. Alistair Davies handled the liquidation of the house with quiet efficiency. Movers came and packed the few things I wanted to keep: my books, Robert's favorite armchair, the boxes of photographs, a few cuttings from my rose bushes. The rest was sold or given away. I felt lighter with every object that left the house. I was shedding a skin, letting go of a life that no longer fit. Cassandra and Marcus tried to call, of course. First came the frantic, pleading messages. Then the angry, accusatory ones. Finally, they sent a letter from their lawyer, a blustering, impotent document that Alistair dismissed with a single, dryly worded response. The legal fortress Robert had built was impregnable. After that, there was only silence. They had the car, a seafoam green monument to their own avarice and short-sightedness. I have no idea what they did with it. Perhaps it sits in their pristine, three-car garage, a constant, silent rebuke. Or perhaps they did scrap it, unable to bear the sight of it. It doesn't matter. Its purpose was served. I bought a small apartment in a quiet coastal town, a place where the air smells of salt and the rhythm of life is governed by the tides. It has a wide balcony that overlooks the ocean, and I have filled it with pots of herbs and flowers. It is bright and airy, filled with light. It is mine. And parked in the designated spot downstairs, gleaming as if it were brand new, is the tortoise. I kept it. I couldn't part with it. I had it restored, not to a flashy, showroom shine, but to a state of quiet dignity. The engine was tuned, the chrome polished, the interior reupholstered in a soft, grey leather. The faded seafoam green paint was given a new, lustrous coat of the exact same shade. It is still the tortoise, steady and reliable, but now it wears its history with pride, not shame. It is no longer a symbol of who I was, but a testament to who I have become. Sometimes, in the evenings, I sit on my balcony and watch the sun set over the water, a vast, shimmering expanse of possibility. I think of Robert, and I feel a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the money, but for his faith in me. He didn't just leave me wealth, he left me a final lesson in self-worth. He built me a lifeboat, but he trusted that I would know how, and when, to pilot it myself. The fortune has not changed me, not in the ways Cassandra and Marcus would assume. I do not live lavishly. I have no need for gleaming surfaces or designer labels. The wealth is a tool, not a destination. It is the quiet hum of security beneath my feet. It is the freedom to say no. It is the ability to support Lena's art, to donate to the local library, to live a life of purpose without the constant, grinding anxiety of want. It is the space to simply be. My greatest discovery was not the accounts in the Swiss vaults, but the realization that my value was never up for debate. It was not something to be conferred upon me by my children or my possessions. It was inherent. It was the quiet resilience I had cultivated for years, the love I had given, the small joys I had cherished. The mockery I endured was never truly about a car. It was about a way of life. A way of seeing. They looked at my life and saw lack. They couldn't see the richness just beneath the surface, the intricate web of memory, love, and quiet contentment that held it all together. They saw an old car, I saw a lifetime. The keys I gave Cassandra were a metaphor. I handed her the literal, physical object, the thing she could see and touch, and she was disgusted by it. She couldn't comprehend that the true power, the true key, was intangible. It was the knowledge, the history, the perspective she so desperately lacked. She wanted the treasure, but she was unwilling to honor the map. And so, she was left with nothing. Perhaps you understand this. Perhaps you, too, have felt invisible, defined by someone else's narrow vision of who you are. Perhaps you have been made to feel that your quiet life, your old car, your worn but comfortable chair, is a sign of failure rather than a symbol of a life well lived. Do not let them convince you. Do not let their noise drown out the truth of your own worth. The most valuable things you will ever possess are the parts of you they cannot see, the quiet strength they mistake for weakness, the deep reserves of wisdom they dismiss as old-fashioned. Your life is not an object to be appraised. It is a story, and you are the only one who holds the key to its most precious chapters. Look closer. The map is there. The key is in your hand. All you have to do is decide to turn it.